We're learning the first Sikha on Parsha Shmini in Chelek Chav Beis on page 39. The shir today is being learned Lili Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. This is a Sikha on a Rashi in this week's Parsha, a very Gishmake Rashi Sikha. In Pasik, Vayisa Aaron es Yadav Gomer, Vayivorchem, Vayered Ma'asei Sachatos Gomer. So in the beginning of this week's Parsha, it speaks about the karbonis that were brought by Yom HaShmini on the 8th day after the Shivas Yemei HaMiluim, the 7 days that the Mishkan was put up and down. And finally on the 8th day is when the fire and the Shechina dwells in the Mishkan. And Aaron and his children bring karbonis in the Mishkan. And at the conclusion of these karbonis, the Pasuk tells us that Aaron raised his hands and he benched the Yidden and he went down from making the Chatas. So Rashi brings the word Vayivarchem from the Pasuk and is Mefarish and he explains. Birchas Kayanim. He benched them with the bracha of Birchas Kayanim. Yivarechacha Yair Yisa. And Rashi quotes the 3 words of the 3 psukim that are later in the Torah in Parshas Nasai, the 3 brachas of Yivarechacha, Yair, and Yisa. The Makkah von der Pirish Rashi is wie steht in Farshi Rashi von Teres Kayanim. Source of this Rashi is in the Teres Kayanim on Bekama Mekaimis B'Shas, also in various places in Gemara, is Mevur as from dem Pasik, Vayisa Aaron es Yadav Vayivorchem, when it says that Aaron raised his hands, learnt man up Kamadinam in Birchas Kayanim. We learn certain halachas of Birchas Kayanim, how it's done throughout the generations, what the mitzvah of Birchas Kayanim is learnt right here from this Pasik. Therefore, the question though is, Kekushis Ramban. And the Ramban asks this question on Rashi. Rashi is Mefarish Pshute Shel Mikra. Rashi explains only the simple and literal meaning of a Pasik. On the tzivui of Birchas Kayanim, the mitzvah for Birchas Kayanim, on the psukim Yivrechacha Yar Yisa, was Rashi bringt there up, and the 3 psukim that Rashi quotes from Birchas Kayanim, steht erst später in Parshas Nasai, is only said later on in the Torah in Parshas Nasai. Heint wie kann man lernen in derech Hapshat? So how could you say, in the simple understanding of the pasuk, as the Vayivarchem da is given Birchas Kayanim, that the Vayivarchem here in the pasuk in Vayikra, here in Shmini, is referring to the bracha of Birchas Kayanim, which was not commanded yet, and it comes later in the Torah. The Rabban will this fit in, so the Rabban wants to answer this question as follows: as the parsha from Birchas Kayanim, that this parsha, this mitzvah of Birchas Kayanim, Chach, sie ist geschrieben bei Torah sach später, it's recorded in the Torah much later on, is gesagt geworden früher. However, it was actually said and commanded much earlier. Far der Vayisa Vayivarchem von unser Pasuk. Before, the Pasuk here says that Aaron raised his hands and benches Yidden. Und wie steht gleich noch Parshas Birchas Kayanim, and as we can see also from this, that the next parsha following Birchas Kayanim in Parshas Nasai, what does it speak about? Vayihi bayoim kalis Moshe lahakim es hamishkan. And it was at the time when Moshe Rabbeinu concluded in erecting the Mishkan. Was Nasas given b'yom hashmini lamiluim. So the pasuk right after Birchas Kayanim speaks about what happened b'yom hashmini lamiluim. The Nesiim began bringing their karbonis. So therefore we can say that when it says there Birchas Kayanim, this was a mitzvah that was given to them by Yom HaShmini, but before Aaron HaKayin here came and benched Yidden, so therefore he already received this mitzvah. Aber es ist adech Gottel zu sagen, as Rashi lernt sei. However, it's very difficult to say that Rashi as well accepts this pshat. If this is the case, that Rashi gedarft ergets bavarnen as the parsha from Birchas Kayanim steht in the Torah nit let's say das mannen. Somewhere Rashi should clarify this fact that the parsha of Birchas Kayanim is written in the Torah out of order, similar to what Rashi does in other times. Brengendik dem klal ein muktem amoche b'Torah. And Rashi should explain this based on the rule that Rashi himself quotes a few times, that in Torah it's not written necessarily in a chronological order, and therefore Birchas Kayanim is written much later, but it was said much earlier by Yom HaShmini. Rashi nimmt an as Parshas Birchas Kayanim is nicht gesagt worden bis später. So if Rashi accepts the fact that the Parsha of Birchas Kayanim was not said until later, and we understand this from this, that Rashi doesn't tell us otherwise, hat gedacht lernen kepirish Ramban. So Rashi here, when it says Vayivarchem, he should translate and explain like the Ramban says. As the Vayivarchem da is nit Birchas Kayanim. It's not referring to the mitzvah of Birchas Kayanim. Nor a bracha stam. It was a bracha that Aaron said. Was Aaron hat gebenched Yidden beim Verendigen seiner Aveda zum ersten Mal. He benched Yidden when he concluded his Aveda the first time. Al derech wenn wir gefunden bei Shlomo HaMelech b'Chanukas HaMikdash. Shlomo HaMelech, when he inaugurated the first Beis HaMikdash, he also benched Yidden, but it has nothing to do with Birchas Kayanim. So here as well, Vayavarchem, Aaron is a Kayin, but like Shlomo Melech, it has nothing to do with Birchas Kainim. There's a reason why Rashi said that this is referring to the Birchas Kainim of Yorecha Yar Yisa. And the commentaries explain as follows. As the Hechrich zu lernen, as Vayavarchem meint Birchas Kainim, what forces Rashi to say that Vayavarchem is Birchas Kainim, is from them was dort blois Aaron gebencht Yidden. That over here, only Aaron HaKayin alone benched the Yidden, on the Status von Moshe, without the participation of Moshe Rabbeinu benching the Yidden. Nit wie the bracha was wird gesagt gleich nach dem, unlike the bracha that it says in the following pasuk, Vayavoy Moshe ve'Aaron geime and Vayavarchu esam, that Moshe and Aaron together benched the Yidden. So why is Aaron benching the Yidden alone? Is the fun verstandig as die bracha ad gata shayches nor zu Aaron. This bracha here is related only to Aaron. Und der Pfarrer ist Rashi mefarish, as das is given Birchas Kayanim. And therefore Rashi says, this belongs to Aaron, he's a Kayan. Just like on this day, Aaron HaKayin for the first time, is the Aveda of serving the Beis HaMikdash was inaugurated. So he's also the very first time, the inauguration of benching Yidden, and he's being trained in the chinuch of benching Yidden. This was also the very first time similar to Aveda. So therefore this is only for Aaron HaKayin, and he doesn't bench together with Moshe. So that's what forces Rashi to say that this is not just stam any bracha similar to Shlomo Melech, but specifically Birchas Kainim. Aber, however, for PS es ist da hechlich zu sagen, as die bracha hat gata shayches dafke zu Aaron. Yes, there is a clear proof here in the pasuk that this bracha is related specifically to Aaron. Is nachals schwer zu sagen, as das is Birchas Kainim. However, it's still very difficult to say that we're speaking here about the mitzvah of Birchas Kainim mentioned later in Parshas Nasei. Neisef of Hanal, in addition to the previous question, as the tzivah of Birchas Kainim steht erst in Parshas Nasei, that the mitzvah comes later on in Parshas Nasei. But this brings up another three questions here. Aleph, oiv, das is given an inyan von chinuch l'nesiyas kapayim, if this is actually the chinuch, the education or training into the new mitzvah of Nesiyas Kapayim, benching Yidden, hat gedarft euch, again, hat gedarft auf dem sein, at Zivim befurish. So there should be a clear mitzvah on this. Punkt, wie Moshe hat angesagt Aaron, auf alle chinuch Avedes, was Aaron hat getan, jenem Tag. Like we find all other Avedes that were done on this day as a chinuch to begin the Avedes of the Beis HaMikdash, there was a specific command of what and exactly how those korbanos should be brought. So you would expect the same thing should be regarding the Birchas Kayanim, that there should be a bracha, a tzivui, a command about this bracha here. Beis, another question, Nesiyas Kapayim is the mitzvah saseh of jeden Kayin. This is a mitzvah saseh, applies to every Kayin, not just the Kayin Gadol. Hein favos haben die Bnei Aaron sich nicht bestattet geworden in the Birchas Kayanim, betorchinoch, kanal. So why did Aaron HaKayin's children not participate in benching the Yidden if the point here is that they're now beginning their chinuch of the very first time of Birchas Kainim benching Yidden? Oder als Kiyam mitzvah saseh. This is an actual fulfillment of a mitzvah saseh to bench the Yidden. Al derech, wie sie haben sich bestattet geworden in the andere Pulis von Aaron b'Yom, as we find that they participated in the other activities of Aaron HaKayin bringing the karbanis here in the Mishkan on this day. Gimel, the third question here is, B'Shmini lamiluim is euch Moshe gewen HaKayin. On the 8th day, Moshe Rabbeinu himself was still a Kayin. Rashi explained this in Parshas Pekudei as beches lamiluim hushvu kulam lakohuna. On the 8th day, all Aaron and his children and Moshe were all Kayanim. It's not necessary to be mechanech Moshe Rabbeinu that he begins the mitzvah today, and this is for the future when he'll have to fulfill this mitzvah because it was only for this day. Aber, however, favos soll sich nicht bestattet sein in the Nesiyas Kapayim von dem Tag. Why shouldn't he participate in the mitzvah of Nesiyas Kapayim on this day, which is a mitzvah on all Kainim, Moshe Rabbeinu included? Ubefrat, and especially as Loit Rashi, according to Rashi, at Moshe getan alla avodas hayom regilis euch beches lamiluim. The usual avodas, the karbanis that I mentioned earlier in the Torah, that were brought on the 7 days and then on the 8th day as well. Who's the one that brought them? Moshe Rabbeinu. Unit Aaron. Aaron HaKayin only brings the special karbanis for the day, for the 8th day mentioned here in Parashat Shmini. So Moshe Rabbeinu actually served as a Kayin on this day. So why would he not participate in the Birchas Kayinim if it's a mitzvah on him as well? Let's move on to the next Rashi. So the Rebbe says, Nach die Werte Birchas Kayinim is Rashi, we're still in this Rashi. Got to get to the next Rashi soon. So here in this Rashi, what does he say? Birchas Kayanim is Rashi Meisiv Kanal, Yivarechacha Yair Yisa. He brings the three words of the beginning of the three brachas of the psukim of Birchas Kayanim. It's Tamua, so this is difficult to understand. Vim Mefarshim Fragen, as the commentaries ask, Noch was darf Rashi Meisiv sein die Werte? Why does Rashi have to add these words? It says, Doch Pashit, afile by a kind. It's obvious, and even for a child learning this, as Birchas Kayanim meant, Yivarechacha Yair Yisa. That's what Birchas Kayanim consists of. It's well known. Why is it necessary for Rashi to spell this out? Even if we would say, and this is a deichik, it's difficult, but we could say this as Rashi verlässt sich da nicht as the Talmud weiß von them. Rashi is not relying on the fact that the student learning this is aware of the bracha of Birchas Kayanim. Warum? Hat doch nicht gelernt, hat das noch nicht gelernt in Chumash. Nicht gelernt in Chumash. He didn't learn this yet in Chumash. It's later in Parshas Nasi. So Rashi could just point to the parsha at the beginning with Yivarechacha. Favos is a mefaret alle drei brachas. Why does Rashi specify the beginning of all three brachas? So Mefarshim and Farenferin, this is the commentaries answer this as follows. As the drei l'shoines, Yivarechacha, Yair, and Yisa, these three brachas, which are in these three words, zene keneged, the drei karbanis, was werden ausgerechnet am pasuk, correspond to the three types of karbanis that are enumerated here in the pasuk, achatas, and oila, mishlamim. And the point is, by Yivarechacha state, v'yishmerecha. The conclusion of the bracha Yivarechacha is v'yishmerecha. What does that mean? Was meant, shmira menachet, Hashem protects you from sinning. So you shouldn't have to come to bring a carbon chatas for a sin. So that's the first bracha related to a carbon chatas. Ya'er is keneged oila. Was kommt ala machshava ra. One of the things a carbon oila is brought for is bad thoughts and bad intention to do an avera, even if it wasn't done. Achet haseichel. So this is a sin of the intellect. Hameir la'adam. Intellect is the source of light that illuminates things in a person's life. So therefore, Ya'er, Hashem illuminating a person, is also preventing him of even having this darkness, so to speak, in his mind, where he's thinking about doing an Aveda. On Yisa, was verendigt sich mit V'yasim l'cha Shalom, the final bracha, which concludes with Shalom, is Keneged Shalom, corresponds to the carbon Shalom, Shemeisim Shalom Vayla, which brings peace to the world. So that's why Rashi mentions all three psukim, or all three brachas, corresponding to the three types of karbanis brought on this day. Und davon lernt man ab, as die bracha das gewend nit ke Birchas Shloime, nor Birchas Kayanim. So therefore, from this we learn that this bracha wasn't just stama bracha similar to Shlomo Melech when he benched Yidden by the first base of Mikdash, but this is Birchas Kayanim, weil dafke die brachas and in masim to the karbanis verstehen da on pasuk, because it's specifically Birchas Kayanim which fits with the karbanis that were brought here, mentioned in the pasuk. However, the Rebbe says on this pshat, this is very difficult to say that this is what Rashi means. This is a very far hint. If this is Rashi's intention, Rashi would definitely elaborate and explain this clearly, that it's these three psukim, these three brachas, corresponding to the three karbanis that are brought here. Okay, so now moving on to the next Rashi. The noch stellt sich Rashi from Vart Vayere. The pasuk afterwards says Vayere, that Ar Nakayim went down me'asais achatos on his mefarish me'al ha-mizbeach. That Ar Nakayim came down from the mizbeach. After verstehen, so the obvious question here is, in pasuk steht beferish Vayere me'asais achatos came. That Ar Nakayim went down from the place where he made the chatos. But asiyas achatos game is the chayf mizbeach. That's done on the mizbeach, wie gesagt früher, as mentioned before. So what is Rashi telling us? Something new here, that he's coming down from the Mizbeach, it's self-understood. Which we wouldn't understand on our own. So there are commentaries that say, as the mit will Rashi bavarene, what Rashi is clarifying here is, as mezol nit meinen, as the vayered is given, noch vayevarchem. Don't think that the order of the pasuk, the way it's written, is what happened. That he only descended from the Mizbeach after he benched the Yidden. Because if that would be the case, then the question would be as follows. Why is it relevant at all to speak about the fact that Ar Nakayim descended from the Mizbeach? When he was done with the work he had to do there, so he went down. It's not necessary for the Torah to let us know the fact that he went down. So no, rather, the way to read this pasuk is as follows. Der Vayeret is given me ala mizbeach, vu eret makriv given the karbonis. He came down from the mizbeach being the place where he brings the karbonis. No, akravas karbonis is given far vayevarchem, and all those karbonis were brought before he benched the Yidden, wie zählt free in the parsha, as already said before in the Torah here. Und das meint the pasuk vayisa vayevarchem. Amesai, when did he bench them? Miyad achar sheyared ben hamazbeach me'asei's karbonis. He benched them immediately after he came down. So when you read Vayered and Rashi says me'al hamazbeach, what Rashi is telling you is he came down from doing what he does on the mizbeach, which is the karbonis, and only after that did he bench them. That's what Rashi is clarifying. Und der Pirish is masim mit dem Pirish ha-Teres Kainim auf dem Pasuk. This pshat Rashi says here fits with what it says in the Teres Kainim here, as harezeh pasuk mesuris. This pasuk is written out of order. Ve'ein roi loy me'ela. It would have been fit to say ve'el vayered masais v'ashlamim. He came down from doing the karbonis, and only afterwards vayisa and gaimer. Then he raised his hands and ve'yevarchem and benched the Yidden. Und wir gefind dem Minyan from Mikra Mesuris. We find this that the Torah writes out of order. Oich in Pirish Rashi ala Torah in Parsha Shmos. We find it also in Rashi in Parsha Shmos. So this is another pasuk which is written out of order. This is the pshat that the commentaries explain what Rashi is coming to say here with these words me'asais vayered. It means not me'asais. Sorry, the pasuk says me'asais, but Rashi says vayered me'al hamizbeach. That you should understand that this is out of order. Aber lefi Pirish zeh is tzarich iyan gadol. If this is what Rashi is coming to say, this is tzarech in gadol. This needs to be understood because it really doesn't fit into Rashi. Weil, because in addition to the fact as der inyan from Mikra Mesuris, having a pasuk that's written out of order is nit glatik and limud al derech hapshat, is not at all smooth when you learn a simple pshat of a pasuk. Und if Rashi wollte das gemeint, if this is what Rashi's intention is, wollte das gesagt beferish. So Rashi definitely would have said such a thing clearly. Al derech pirusha in Parsha Shmos anal, as Rashi himself clearly says in Parsha Shmos. Is oid ve'iker. In addition, there's another two main questions here on this. Aleph, in the verter me'al hamizbeach v'lecha Rashi gitzu zum lashon pasuk. The words that Rashi adds to the language of the pasuk that he descended from the mizbeach, zetmenit kein remez oif kein zach. This doesn't really hint to anything. Not an upteich. It's just telling you as the vayered is given me'al hamizbeach, where he came down from. That he came down from the mizbeach. Und der Minyan zet man in the pasuk gufe vayered masay sachatas gaim the canal. And this you know from the context of the pasuk. It says he came down from making the chatas, which is obviously on the mizbeach. So where is the Rashi adding to what the pasuk says? How do you see here in this Rashi that it's a mikra mesuris and that the birchas kaina was after he came down? Beis abroche is doch nit an avodas mizbeach. Benching the Yidden is not an avodah related to the mizbeach. Is when die Werte vayered masay gaim wollten klal nit gestanden. If the pasuk would not at all say that he came down, wolt men euch gelernt as the vayevarchem is given, I would understand on my own that the benching happened nochen verendigen sein avodah al mizbeach, kimafurish bekra, after he concluded the avodah on the mizbeach, ubemela nochten wir es abgehangen al mizbeach, and I would understand that he benched Yidden after he came down from the mizbeach. It's self-understood. Why would he bench Yidden while he's still on the mizbeach? He only go up the mizbeach for a specific purpose, for the karbanis there. So this whole vayered is extra in the pasuk. So how does Rashi over here telling us, according to this pshat, even if it's true that Rashi is coming to say that he benched Yidden after he came down, that would have been self-understood. It's not necessary for the Torah to clarify that. Okay, so we have many questions over here on the Rashis, these two Rashis, two short Rashis, but many questions. So again, just to review, the question about the Birchas Kainim Rashi brings here, how is Birchas Kainim of Parshas Nosei, a mitzvah given much later on, being fulfilled over here? And Rashi does not in any place clarify that ein muktim amocha b'teira. And Rashi specifies the yivarechacha, yoir, and yisa. Why does he do that? And this me'alam mizbeach, vayered me'alam mizbeach. Why is Rashi adding those two words here, me'alam mizbeach, if it's self-understood from the pasuk? So the explanation for all of this here is as follows. Das was Rashi is mefarish vayevarchem birchas kainim. When it says here that he benched them, and he benched them with birchas kainim, meinter nor kipshute mamish. Rashi means, read the words literally. What he's saying, nit mekayim zayin a mitzvah. It's not fulfilling the mitzvah, the command, the mitzvah of birchas kainim. Rashi doesn't say that from birchas kainim. Was steht erst in Parshas Nasa, which is only commanded and given later on in Parshas Nasai, nor rather as Aaron, velachad gewalt benchen Yidden b'siyim avedasai kidel kaman, but rather Aaron HaKohen that desired to bench Yidden when he concluded his aveda, as will be explained later why Aaron wanted to give a specific bracha in relation to his aveda. Hat ausgekliben me atzmai zu benchen Yidden, he on his own chose to bench the Yidden mit the psukim von Birchas Kohanim, with those very same psukim of Birchas Kohanim. Weil der Teichen von Birchas Kohanim is bepashtus masim zu die Sachen mit welcher Aaron dann gewollt benchen Yidden. Because those three psukim of Birchas Kohanim is very simply and directly related to the points that Aaron Kohen wanted to bench the Yidden with. On the high time is Rashi mefaret as the brachas given Yavarech Chayar Yisa. This also explains why Rashi specifies the three words of the three brachas here, Yavarech Chayar and Yisa. Weil die drei Wörter dricken eis dem Teichen von Birchas Aaron kedel kaman sif sein. This specifically expresses the unique bracha that Aaron HaKohen desired to give Yidden in relation with the conclusion of his aveda. So it's not the mitzvah was given later. There's no muktim, we don't have to apply a muktim umocha. Rashi is telling you that Aaron HaKohen benched Yidden with his own unique bracha. Happens to be that bracha was the same psukim as Birchas Kohanim because it was perfectly fitting for this occasion and for the point of his bracha. Mit was hat Aaron gewollt benchen Yidden demult. So what is the unique thing that Aaron HaKohen wants to bench Yidden at this time? Is move on bepashtos loit pirish Rashi. So this is also simply understood according to Rashi. The mechuvim from Mishkan is dach kimafurish bekra. The point of the Mishkan is, as the pasuk itself says, v'asil mikdash v'shachanti b'seichem, and Hashem Himself dwells in the Mishkan. As it will say, Ashras Hashchina in Mishkan, the Shchina will dwell in the Mishkan. Und kedei, as sich auftan die Ashras Hashchina in Mishkan, is nicht gewen genug die Avedas Hayom Regila von Shmini Lamilun. So for this, it wasn't enough to have the regular Aveda, which is mentioned earlier in Parshas Pekudei, that was done on the 8th day as well. Wegen welches wird erzählt in Parshas Pekudei. Nor es hat gemusst sein, wie steht in Aneb von unser Sedre, but additionally, it was necessary to have, as it says in the beginning of this week's parasha, Zeh hadava shetziv Hashem tasu v'yer aleichem kved Hashem. Here, these are the karbanis you bring, and the Eibusher will appear. Was das meint, wie Rashi is mefarish, the karbanis v'aveda von Aaron, the unique karbanis that Aaron HaKohen brings today. While is kedai v'choshuv, he is fitting and honorable enough. Shal yidei karbanaisav v'avedasai tisha shchina b'chem. Through his karbanis and his aveda in the Beis HaMikdash, or in the Mishkan rather, the Shechina will dwell amongst you, v'teidu shahamakim bachar bay, and you will know that Hashem has chosen him. So therefore, this was the main intention of Aaron's aveda on this day, to bring down the Shechina in the Mishkan. Und damit ist verstandig für was? Aaron hat gebencht Yidden b'siyim avedasai. Why Aaron HaKohen is benching the Yidden when he concludes his aveda here? I'm seeing from Malachas HaMishkan gefindt men, and the Parshas Pekudei, when Yidden finished building the Mishkan, we find as Moshe had gebenched the Yidden. So at that point, Moshe Rabbeinu benches the Yidden. Yiratzen shetish shchina b'maisi yedechem, that the Shchina should dwell in your work. As durch Vasil and Mikdash, soll sich ausführen, der v'shachanti b'seichem, Hashem should come and dwell in the Mishkan that you built for him. Und b'meila ist verstandig, as wie bald Avedas Aaron b'yem Shmini is the Aveda was darf auftan the Ashras Hashchina b'payil. This is the actual Aveda that will bring down the Shechina dwelling in the Mishkan. Fadert sich beim Siyum von der Aveda a Brache und Tefillah, as das soll Payil sein. Pu'ulasa umbringen Ashras Hashchina b'payil. So now it's necessary to have another Brache and a Tefillah to have the effect that the Shechina should actually come down in the Mishkan. So this is the reason why Aaron HaKohen wants to bench Yidden over here. Okay, but this doesn't yet explain the unique connection to Aaron HaKohen. This is the inyan of the Mishkan B'chlal related to all the Klal Yisrael. But there's an additional point that the Rebbe will explain here that's related specifically to Aaron. But in order to explain this, the Rebbe will go back here into the Psukim, which was already mentioned before, that you have two brachas here. There's the bracha that Aaron HaKohen benches Yidden, and when he concludes his Aveda, and then there's the bracha that Moshe and Aaron bench Yidden together. What's the distinction between these two brachas? Now, so seemingly we could ask on this, gleich nach Birchas Aaron steht, vayavi Moshe v'Aaron goyme vayavarchu esam, that Moshe and Aaron both benched the Yidden. Rashi ties this up, and Rashi explains, Amru, they said, v'yinayim Hashem alekeinu aleinu, yiratzen shetish shechina b'maisi yedechem, the bracha they both said together. So the question is, v'bald, as Birchas Aaron is given, I've payal in Ashras Shechina. As was explained, the bracha of Aaron was to bring about the Shechina to dwell. Was hat man danach wieder einmal gedacht haben, a bracha auf demselben Inyan? Why again a second bracha on the exact same thing, that the Shechina should dwell in the Mishkan? Is das kein Kashi nit, weil da sind zwei besondere Inyanim. So this is not a question. If you look into the context of the Psukim and what Aaron HaKohen was doing, we'll understand that it's two different brachas. Birchas Aaron is given verbunden mit sein Avodah Pratis. This is a bracha that Aaron HaKohen is giving connected to his specific Avodah in the Mishkan. Aziza Leifton, Ir Pole, in a minion von Ashras Hashchina B'Payel, that his Avodah should do what it has to accomplish, the certain role that Aaron HaKohen's Avodah plays in bringing down the Shechina. Und auf dem is Massen, the bracha von Birchas Kohanim, could lekaman siv zayin. And for this, the most fitting bracha is the bracha of Birchas Kohanim, as will be explained soon. Masha Enkein, Birchas Moshe ve'Aaron shala achrei. But then, in the following pasuk where it says that Moshe and Aaron both benched the Yidden together, V'hinoyam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu yiratzon shetish Shechina b'maaseh yedechem. And here the language used is that they benched Yidden, that the Shechina should dwell in your work, in your hands. Is a bracha klalis. That's not related specifically to Aaron, but it's more of a general bracha. Al sasiyum von kol uklalis melechas avedas hamishkan. The conclusion of all and the general building and aveda in the Mishkan. Was das drikt zachais in the zwei chalakim von der bracha, and it's expressed in the two parts that is mentioned here in the bracha, which is shetish Shechina b'maaseh yedechem. Maaseh yedechem refers to melechas hamishkan for Yidden, the building of the Mishkan. Similar lashon that said in the end of Parshas Pekudei. And the Yinayim Hashem Elokeinu aleinu in the Aveda b'meshach al shmoynes yimei miluim, aleinu referring to Moshe and Aaron, the Aveda upon them, upon us, meaning what they have done for the 8 days in the Mishkan, the karbanos that they brought. So this is the bracha Moshe and Aaron benched together in connection to the general dwelling of the Shechina in the Mishkan. Now here we come to the unique bracha of Aaron HaKohen himself. The Rabbi explains this here. Dat Tam, von was es hat sich gefordert, die Avodah Miuchedes von Aaron zu öften Ashras Hashchina Mishkan. Why was it necessary to additionally have a special, unique Avodah of Aaron HaKohen to bring about the dwelling of the Shechina in the Mishkan? Is weil Ashras Hashchina hat gekannt sein erst nachdem, wie es gewähnt, die Kapara Gemura auf Chet HaEgel. Because the Shechina could only dwell once you have the full and complete atonement for the Chet HaEgel. This is something that Rashi doesn't have to spell out here again, because Rashi already explained this before. As the far wird der Mishkan angerufen Mishkan Eidos. This is the reason for the name in Parshas Pekudei. The Mishkan is referred to as a Mishkan, which is a testimony. Eidos li Yisrael shevitel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amaisa Egel. This is the testimony for Yidden that Hashem forgave them for what happened with the Egel. Sharei Hishra Shchinasei B'nei, because Hashem is dwelling amongst them. Und wie Rashi bringt up in the pasuk Shala Achreze, and as Rashi quotes here later on, as wenn Yidden haben gesehen, noch die Zayin Yimei Amalun, as es noch nicht da ken Ashras Hashchina, after the 7 days the Mishkan was put up, and they see that the Shechina still doesn't dwell in the Mishkan, haben sie geteinet, they argued, Kol HaTeirech Shetarachnu, all this hard work that we invested here, Shetishre Shechina Beinenu, that the Shechina should dwell amongst us, V'neida Sheniskapelanu Oven Egel, and that we should know that Hashem has forgiven us for the Egel. So again, we see here Rashi tells us to us that this is a prerequisite for the Shechina coming down, when the Yidden are going to be fully forgiven for the Egel. Und das hat Aaron Peil gewähnt durch sein Avodah Pratis. So this is the unique Avodah that Aaron HaKohen does. His Avodah brings down this atonement for the Egel, for the Shechina to come down. Was the far is the erste carbon von Aaron gewähnt an Egel ben Bakar lachatas. The very first carbon he brings is a calf, as a chatas, as an atonement. And Rashi there says, Lo hidia shemachapul HaKadosh Baruch Hu the Egel zeh al maisa Egel she'asa. Here it notifies that Hashem forgave Yidden fully through this Egel for the Egel that happened, the golden calf. So again, Rashi already all explained this to us previously, what the unique Avodah of Aaron HaKohen was here to accomplish, the full kapara for the Chet Egel. So now we understand that Aaron HaKohen's bracha was also uniquely connected as a bracha that atonement is complete and done, the karbanos were brought, and davening that it should be fully accepted. Und das ist euch, was Rashi sagt da, that what was Birchas Kohanim, Yivarechacha, Yair, and Yisrael. And Rashi says the 3 words of the 3 brachas, weil in die Werte von Birchas Kohanim, direkt zachayis, die 3 Inyanim, was Aaron is eisen gewähnt mit seinem bracha. These 3 words expresses the 3 points that Aaron HaKohen was interested in expressing with his bracha. Aleph, number 1, Yivarechacha. What does the word Yivarechacha say? Hashem should bench you. Der Eibishter soll dir benchen. Why is he? What's the beginning over here? The first point that it's Hashem benching you. The erste Zach is as the bracha is nit von Aaron. Aaron comes and benches Yidden. He says, "I'm not benching you. Hashem should be the source of your blessing." Was demult is do an art for a because if it's Aaron HaKohen that's benching the Yidden, then there's room for people to argue and say, since Aaron HaKohen himself had a relation to what happened with the Egel, wie can geben die bracha? How could he be the one to give this bracha as a soll sein die Ashras HaShchina durch der Kapara of my Egel, that the Shchina should come and dwell through the atonement on the Egel? If Aaron HaKohen himself was involved in this. So therefore, nor Aaron bet as the Eibishter allein soll benchen Yidden Yivrechacha. It should be Hashem himself coming to bench Yidden, and so in other words, the kapara is coming from Hashem himself. That's the first point. So Aaron HaKohen benches. He's not saying I bench you, but he begins with Yivrechacha. Hashem benches you, taking himself out of the picture. So no one should argue that he had a relation to the Egel, so he can't bench. And the Teichen bracha is, now what's the actual content of the bracha? Is based, the second point that Aaron mentions, Yo'er. Hashem should illuminate. As a Zozayin Hashroas Hashchina. That's referring to the Shchina coming down. Ha'oras panim de lamayla. The illumination of Hashem's countenance, Hashem coming down here in the world. That's what Yar refers to. Virashi touched up Yar, as Rashi explains there in Parshas Nasi. What does Yar mean? Yare lecha panim seicha kaisa panim tzuhuves. Hashem should show you a happy, smiling face, a shining face. Okay, he says, now in order that the Hashem's countenance should shine to Yidden and the Shechina should dwell, so Bet Aaron HaKohen begs and asks for further Yisa. Gimel, the third point, which is Yisa. As der Eibishter soll sein an Neisa oven. Yisa means that Hashem should carry and forgive the sin. Rashi touched up, as Rashi there in Parshas Nasi says, Yisa means Yichboish Kasai. It actually means Hashem should conquer and carry, conquer rather, the anger that it should be totally atoned for. To forgive for the Aveda of the Egel. So therefore these three words, Yivarechacha Yar Yisa, is perfectly fitting into the context or the content that is of what Aaron HaKohen wants to say here to Yidden. Hashem is benching you, and Hashem will come and shine and dwell. How? Because of Yisa, because Hashem will forgive. Hashem forgives. So the Egel, this is the unique bracha of Aaron, more than just the general bracha on the building of the Mishkan that's mentioned before by Aaron and Moshe together. So now we come back to the second Rashi, where Rashi says that Aaron HaKohen came down from the Mizbeach. We can understand what Rashi's intention is. In the next Rashi, Vayered, Aaron HaKohen descended me'al ha-mizbeach, from the Mizbeach. So again, here you just have to read Rashi and just translate it literally, and you understand what Rashi means. Rashi meant kepashtus l'shoyne. What Rashi means is like just a simple meaning of his language. As Aaron is erst dan noch vayevarchem. Only now, after he benched Yidden, arop gegangen von the Mizbeach. Only then did he come down from the Mizbeach. Weil had gebenched Yidden zayndik noch auf dem Mizbeach. He actually benched Yidden while he was still standing on the Mizbeach. Not like it says in Teres Kainim that he was done with his karbanis and he descended from the Mizbeach and only then he benched. No, he actually benched Yidden on the Mizbeach. This is a unique thing, even though Birchas Kainim or the bracha Aaron HaKohen is saying here seemingly has nothing to do with the Mizbeach. So why is he benching Yidden on the Mizbeach? But actually that's the whole point. Aaron HaKohen wants to bench Yidden dafka on the Mizbeach, as we'll see here. Und damit macht Rashi klar, so with this Rashi clarifies as follows. As those was sagt in dem Friedigen Dibra Maskel, this Rashi explained just before this, that Vayevarchim Birchas Kainim, that he benches them Birchas Kainim, meint nit die mitzvah von the Siyas Kapayim L'Doiris. This does not refer to the mitzvah of benching Yidden that applies for Kainim later on and in all future generations. Weil damals wollte sie nicht gewinnen vom Mizbeach, because then this would not be on the Mizbeach. Why is it related? Why is it done dafka on the Mizbeach? Mizbeach is a place of karbanis. No, es ist gewen a brache für Michedes von Aaron. This is a unique brache that Aaron is benching Yidden here. Was kommt behemshich und als Siyum zu sein demmeltige Aveda ala Mizbeach. This is actually related and concluding sort of the Aveda on the Mizbeach that he's doing right then. Kanal, as we've explained before here, as the bracha is given, as the Aveda shalifneze zol poil zan polasa. Really, the content of his bracha was that this unique Aveda that Aaron was doing here on this day, to forgive for the Egel, that it should have its effect. That was the content of the bracha, Yivarechacha Yar and Yisa. Und der Fahr ist sie gesagt geworden, and therefore the bracha was said gleich besmiches zu der Aveda, und der Fahr sein the gnach al Mizbech. So the bracha is said immediately after these karbanis, and still while he's on the Mizbech. It's not just a general bracha like Birchas Kainim or general bracha for the building of the Mishkan like Aaron and Moshe benched together, but this is a unique bracha of Aaron and Kain now in connection to his karbanis that he's bringing here. So he says it on the Mizbech. So this is what Rashi is clarifying by saying that the way to read and understand the pasuk Vayered is that he came down from the Mizbeach. What's Rashi clarifying here? If you look back into the pasuk, so now learn the pasuk Vayered me'asais hachatas. The words of the pasuk is that he came down from the place where he made the chatas. The pashtus kumtais, so simply it would come out as the pasuk will sagen as Aaron hat verendigt sein Aveda. That Aaron HaKohen was done with the Aveda that he did mit asiyas hachatas going, with bringing the chatas there. That's it. But then right after that he came down. But if so, the question becomes, Aaron hat doch schon früher geendigt die Akravas HaKarbanis. He concluded with the Karbanis before. So why does the pasuk say now that he came down, and it interrupts in between with this that he benched the Yidden from the Mizbeach? So that is actually the question here, that it's out of order. Is Rashi mefarish? So therefore Rashi says, as kavanas hakosiv is need to the tzelen as vayered me'asais hachatas gaime as hat verendigt the aveda. The pasuk here is not coming to say that Aaron HaKohen was done with his work on the Mizbeach, so he came down from the Mizbeach. It's not coming to tell us this fact that when you're done with what you have to do on the Mizbeach, he comes down. Obviously he would come down. Why would the pasuk have to say that to us? No, rather Rashi says, you understand the pasuk as if it says, Vayered me'al ha-Mizbeach. He came down from the Mizbeach. The pasuk is eisen zu sagen, as noch vayevarche. Not only after he finished the Aveda there, but after he actually benched the Yidden on the Mizbeach, is Vayered me'al ha-Mizbeach. He came down from the Mizbeach. In other words, uns ist kielu wie im pasuk volt gestanden, Vayered me'al ha-Mizbeach. As if the pasuk is telling you that he's coming down not immediately after he brings the karbanis, but he's coming down from the Mizbeach, because it's after he's benching Yidden. And so what is the pasuk actually saying? Und die weitere Gewerte, when the pasuk actually says, me'asais hachatas, from making the chatas, that's sort of in parentheses, was erklärt, wie kommt Aliyas Aaron auf dem Mizbeach. That's just clarifying what's Aaron HaKohen doing on the Mizbeach. Nit tzalib vayevarchim. Don't think that he went back up onto the Mizbeach especially for this bracha. But no, tzalib asiyas chatas gaim. It's telling you that Aaron HaKohen was already there because he was making the chatas. So vayeret me'asayis chatas is just saying, don't think he was there and then he may have went down or maybe he went back up, but he was there for the chatas. But he benched Yidden there, and then he came down from the Mizbeach. So the way to read the pasuk is Vayered, and then as if it says Ma'ala Mizbeach, he came down from the Mizbeach after he benched Yidden, and it's understood that that's what the pasuk means because that's the order. It says Vayered after he benched Yidden, so it's not after he made the chatas. Either pasuk says Ma'asais chatas. It's just clarifying to you that he was there already because he made the chatas there. That's how Rashi is understanding this pasuk. So the pasuk is written in a perfect order, and it's not necessary for Rashi here to say that it's a mikra mesudas like the pshat of the Teres Kainim. Al pi kol now is verstandig. So now, based on all this, you understand as from Pirish Rashi da kemenet wissen shitasai. There's no way to determine what his opinion would be. Al derech hapshat, in the simple understanding of psukim here, the Birchas Kainim l'dairis regarding the mitzvah of Birchas Kainim for all generations that was done in the Beis Hamikdash. Tzizmana is lefnei haktores evarim shalatamid or the lachreze. Was the time of Birchas Kainim before they burnt the pieces of the carbon tamid in the morning or afterwards? So this is a discussion that some of Farshim discuss here, whether you can prove it here from the order of when Aaron HaKohen benched the Yidden. Could it be proven from here for Birchas Kainim in all generations in the Beis HaMikdash, whether it was done before or after the evarim of the tamid are burnt in the Mizbeach? So based on the way we're understanding this Rashi here, what Aaron HaKohen's bracha here is, there's no way to prove anything from this pasuk. While kavanas Rashi mit zayin pirish birchas kainim, as was explained, when Rashi here says that Aaron HaKohen benched birchas kainim is nit of kiyum mitzvahs birchas kainim. This is not the fulfillment of the mitzvah of birchas kainim. Nor as Aaron had ausgeklippen to sagen die bracha. Aaron chose to say this bracha. Aber die Matare von der Bracha ist gewähnt als an Inyan miyuchad von jenem Tag. It's related specifically to what he was doing here on that day. The kasha and als asiyum to zan aveda miyuchedes from Shmini lamilum kanal. It's in connection with and sort of concluding the actual aveda. So much so that this is a birchas kainim done there on the Mizbeach, where the Karbanos are brought. So it's a different kind of bracha altogether, not related to the mitzvah and future generations. But now, on the other hand, though, the Rebbe concludes here, even though this is a unique bracha for that time period, Lidach Gisa, on the other hand, Afa Pias Birches Ha'arenda, Dan, is given an Inyim Yuchat Fayenim Tag. Yes, it is a unique bracha for that day. Is he Abba bracha was hot a Pu'ulin Imsheches of Aladaitis. However, this is a bracha that has a continued effect in all generations. Because in general, the whole Avodah of Aaron on that day, which concludes with this bracha, hat Oivketan Kanal Sifei as a Zaltzirig Veren de Ashras Ashchina Lamata. This finally brought then back that the Shechina should dwell amongst Yidden. After the Shechina was removed by the Avedis that happened before this. And the Shechina came back in a manner as von demolt on gefindt sich die Shechina betachteinem dafke aufständig. That the Shechina, the Eibishter, dwells here below, and this is true, constant in all future generations. So therefore, Aaron Kain's accomplishment of this day, the Avodah and this bracha as well, is continuous for all future generations. Hat man ständig dem Koyach, that is, from Birchas Aaron. So we have constantly the power of this bracha of Aaron Kain that's given for all generations, afila balayla, and that includes even at night, and afila b'chutzla, that's was is nicht da can see is kapayim b'chol yom. Chutzla, it's where we don't do the mitzvah of benching the birchas kainim every day, and by night when there's no birchas kainim chulu. So the point there is that Aaron Kain is benching dafke, not limited to the time and situations where birchas kainim is done. So this is a birchas kainim that goes past that, and therefore this bracha continues even at night time and even in chutzla. It's this bracha that provides us with the power needed to go through the darkness of Galus, bis zum Oifton Nachamal, till we will finally again accomplish them Gilui Shechina, to bring down the revelation of the Shechina. So the Rebbe emphasizes revelation because the presence of the Shechina below is here. But we will again reveal the Shechina v'shachanti b'seichem, to dwell amongst us in the Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi, in the third Beis Hamikdash, sheyibane b'meheira b'yameinu mamish, to be built speedily in our days, literally.